But I've asked them if they would start this evening in the following way. You're all familiar with straw manning. Anyone who follows politics knows straw manning. But I've asked them to do the opposite tonight, to start by steel manning the arguments of each other, to present in the best possible, most fair, most rigorous light what they understand to be the other's argument on all of the major issues we're about to discuss. I'm going to ask Sam Harris to go first, and we're going to go from there. Sam.
Great. Well, thank you. So first, thank you all for coming. It's an immense privilege for us to do this. And I should say many of you have sacrificed a lot to come here. People have come from other countries. I'm told you all dealt with a ticketing system that seems like it was run from a cave in Afghanistan. Again, thank you all, because it's one thing for us to put this date on the calendar and say we're going to speak here. It's another for all of you to show up, and this is a privilege we certainly don't take for granted. So, and it's an immense one. So Jordan, and I should say that though much of our conversation together will often sound like we're debating, we'll definitely, none of us are in the habit of pulling our punches. There's an immense amount of goodwill here, and it's true on stage, it's true off stage, and we're all trying to refine our beliefs together in conversation. So none of us view this as a debate, though we might stridently disagree about one thing or another. So what Jordan, I think, disagrees with me about, I think he's worried that we clearly have a common project. We're both concerned to understand how to live lives worth living. How can we do this individually? And how can we build societies that safeguard this project for millions of people attempting to do this in their diverse ways? And so many questions immediately come online when you try to do that. But what is the relationship between facts and values, for instance, or science and spiritual experience, or our ethical lives? And we have, for the moment, differing answers to those questions. Jordan is concerned that in my allergy to religion, insufficiently value the power of stories in general and religious stories in particular. That there's something more than just nakedly engaging with facts as they are. We don't simply come into contact with reality. We have to interpret reality. We interpret it through our senses and with our brains, obviously. But you need frameworks and, as Jordan would say, stories with which to do that. You don't get facts in the raw. And Jordan believes that because my purpose so often is to counter what I view as the dangerous dogmas within religion, I ignore the power and even the necessity of certain kinds of stories and certain ways of thinking about the world and our situation in the world that not only bring many, many millions and even billions of people immense value, are in fact necessary for anyone, however rational, to build a society where all of our well-being can be conserved. So I think if in brief, that's Jordan's concern about me.
So Sam is concerned, I would say, above all, with the minimization of unnecessary suffering, which seems to me to be a pretty good place to start. And he's concerned that in order to do that, we need to develop an ethic, and that ethic should be grounded in that realization that unnecessary suffering is worth contending with and dealing with, and that if we make too much of the divide between facts and values, then we end up in a situation where our value structure has no super subordinate foundational grounding. And this is a big problem. So generally in the philosophical community, it's accepted, although not universally, that it's difficult, if not impossible, to derive values from facts. But the problem with that proposition is that you end up in a situation where either you lose all your values because they're just arbitrary, or you have to ground them in something that isn't, that's revelatory. And Sam is concerned that one of the negative consequences of grounding your fundamental ethic in something that's revealed is the emergent consequence of irrational fundamentalism. And so obviously that's worth contending with. And so he's taking issue with the philosophical idea that facts and values have to be separate, and formulating the proposition that we can in fact ground a universal system of values in the facts, and that we can mediate between the facts and the system of values using our facility for truth, but even more specifically our facility for rationality, and that rationality can be the mediator between the world of facts and the world of values. And so the problem I have with that, I guess if we can skip briefly to problems, is that it isn't obvious to me how to produce an ethos with sufficient motivating power to ground that conception of the minimization of suffering, say, and the promotion of well-being in a way that grips people and unites a society. And so I think that's part of what we're discussing and trying to sort out with regards to the potential role of narrative and religious belief as an underpinning to this ethos. We seem to agree on the necessity for the universal ethos. We even seem to agree, I would say, on what that is, because certainly the minimization of suffering seems to me to be a very good place to start. We share a concern with and a belief that the pathway to that ethos is in some manner related to our ability to speak the truth, but we disagree on what that has to be grounded in and how it has to be grounded. My sense, especially after thinking about our discussion, is that Sam makes what rationality is do too much work. And I'm hoping that, not that rationality is irrelevant or unimportant, because it clearly is neither of those, but maybe the devil's in the details, and hopefully we can get down to the details tonight. And we've brought Douglas into the conversation. He's here to serve as much more than a mere moderator. And partly we've determined that, as Sam alluded to, that what we're actually trying to figure out is what are the minimal necessary preconditions for the construction of engaged, productive individuals with meaningful, responsible lives in a society that's stable enough to sustain itself and dynamic enough to change. What are the minimal preconditions for that? What are the and how do we ground those presuppositions, those preconditions? And what price do we pay for having them? Because you never get something without a cost. And we thought that Douglas would be a very interesting addition to this conversation, because of course he's concentrated on such things as borders. And when you set up preconditions for social order, you also automatically produce such things as hierarchies and borders, and they don't come without a cost. And so we hope to expand the conversation to include a discussion of those